Hello, this is Jennifer McGuire, and thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. So lately, more and more companies have been coming out with foiling products, so we can add a bit of shine to our cards. Well, today I thought I'd show you how you can use your foil on clear things, such as acetate and vellum. This is a great way to step up your techniques, do shaker cards, do window cards, clear cards, and much more. I have a few examples for you today, but I plan to share more in a future video because there are just many creative ways you can use this technique, and it's super easy. Now, today's video does require a hot foil machine. I'm a big fan of them and use them a lot, and I will link to my basics video about the Glimmer hot foil machine here in the top right. You can click that if you want to check that out. I normally don't do this, but today I'm starting out by sharing with you some of the products I'll be using in today's video. They are very well designed and go together nicely, and I think it's best to see them all together. So this is from Pinkfresh Studio. It's the Small Butterflies line. Now, there is a hot foil plate in this. You can see here it foils all of those butterflies at one time, and I'll be using this today. There is also a stamp set that is the same, but it's stamps. So if you prefer to stamp, you could do that. You can see it up there on the top left. There is a coordinating die too that you just place over your stamped or foiled butterflies, and it cuts them all out at once. Super fast. I don't have the stamp set or die set, so we'll be going without that today. And there is a layering stencil set that you can use to quickly add color to the butterflies, so they all go together nicely. A few months ago, Pinkfresh came out with these butterfly products. There's a stamp set, a coordinating die, and layering stencils that allow you to add the color quickly. And I did a video using this. I'll link to it on the top right if you want to check it out. Well, now they have a hot plate that coordinates with it too. And I really like that all of these products can be used together or separately. Now remember, if you don't have a foiling machine or hot plates like this, you could do today's technique with heat embossing, but the shine you get from foil is much more impressive and it really looks cool and smooth. So I will be demonstrating the hot foil plates today, but keep that in mind, you could do heat embossing. So here is the card I did with that stamp set, layering stencils, and die in a previous video, which again, I'll link to. Well, today we're going to step it up with a hot foil plate. Here's another combination that Pinkfresh Studio just came out with a hot plate to go with. So here are some layering stencils, and there's a coordinating die available. I don't believe there's a stamp set for this one. Well, now they have a hot foil plate that will provide an outline if you'd like. I really like this set, but unfortunately Lila and I were sick this weekend with a terrible cold, so I didn't have time to make something with this. But here is an example I did in a previous video that I'll link to if you're looking for ideas for that daisy wreath. Now here's a good combination. I'll be using this today. This is the Thankful for Friends. So this stamp set they released in the past has some nice sentiments in it and that beautiful floral image, very detailed. And there is a coordinating die that they had available. There are also now layering stencils, so you can quickly color those in. I'll be using those today, and a hot foil plate. This is a beautiful one, and I'll be demonstrating it in two ways, one on cardstock and one on acetate. Hot foil plate backgrounds are fantastic too, and now there is the Pinkfresh Studio Sweet Blooms hot foil plate. They had the stamp and the layering stencils to color it, but now they have the hot foil plate available too. I will be using the hot foil plate alone without the stamps and the stencil, just to show you the many ways you can use it. This is a previous video where I used just the stamp and the stencils for a background, and I will link to this also. I hope that by showing you some of these previous examples very quickly, it inspires you for more ways to use products like this. Okay, another new one is the Hugs and Good Vibes hot foil plate. This says sending hugs and good vibes your way, and it really fills a card nicely so you don't have to do much else to it. And there is the coordinating die, and I believe they had that in a stamp set previously too. And they also have the word sweet in a hot foil plate and a coordinating die to cut that out. So I'll be using several of these products that I'm sharing here today, along with some other products that I've used in previous videos, so you can get more ideas for those too. Okay, let's jump into the hot foil techniques. Again, I have my basics video linked on the top right, but there were a few things I wanted to review here. To use hot foil plates, you need a certain type of foil. Usually, the foil that you use with hot foil plates comes on a roll. These are hot foil rolls, and there are many colors. Now, I mostly use the Glimmer hot foil rolls from Spellbinders because I use the Spellbinders Glimmer machine. However, there are other types too, usually again on the roll. You just want to make sure that the foil that you get is meant for hot foil plates. I will provide some links below to foil and to this little organizer that I have. I will say my two most used foils are the Prism, which is a holographic silver, and the Aura, which is a gold holographic. And you'll see me use those quite a few times today. The hot foil machine that I'm using is the Spellbinders Glimmer machine. Now this is really important. Your foil machine will be used along with your die cut machine. So you need to get whatever foil machine goes with the die cut machine you have. Now the die cut machine that I have is a Spellbinders Platinum 6. So I use the Spellbinders Glimmer machine because they work together. If you have a different die cut machine, you might need a hot foil machine. And there are many out there and they all work just as well as the other. So really you just want to get whatever machine goes with the die cut machine you have. Here is my Spellbinders Platinum 6, which works great with the Glimmer machine. I had this machine on my favorites list. It really is the best all-around machine. The only thing it isn't is electric. Other than that, plates don't warp on it. You can use it with your Glimmer. You can use it with any of the embossing folders out there. It really is a great machine, and it goes on sale a lot too. Okay, let's get started by just doing basic hot foiling and adding color on cardstock. Then we'll get into the acetate and vellum. Off screen, I've allowed my Glimmer machine to warm up until the platform ready light is on. I've laid my hot foil plate onto the hot portion of the Glimmer machine. That's that gray area. Now I'm laying my hot foil pretty side down. You want the pretty side touching the hot foil plate. Then I'm putting my cardstock on top of that. Now you could arrange this little sandwich here off to the side and then bring it to the platform. This was easy enough. On top of that, I'm putting the first plate. Then I like to use a cardstock shim, just a scrap piece of cardstock. And then the other plate. Those plates come with the machine. Then you push the timer button and it'll flash. Once it stops flashing, which isn't too long, you are ready to move it to your die cut machine. So you can see the light has stopped flashing. I have my die cut machine ready. You want it ready right away. You pull all the plates out of your Glimmer machine by that handle there in the front and then put it through your die cut machine. I like to go slowly one direction and slowly the other direction. This will provide the pressure that will make that foil stick to the paper. So you have heat and pressure. All right, so now we can remove the foil and look at this beautiful result. Now you'll notice there's a little extra foil between some of the outline. All I do is I take a dry brush and rub that away. And look at that. It's just gorgeous. I have done many foiling videos in the past, and nothing gives better results than using any type of foil machine. It's really a great, smooth, shiny result, and it doesn't damage easy, which is a big plus. Okay, now remember, I have the layering stencils that go with this flower image. So instead of using the layering stencils with a stamped image, I'm using them with the foil image. You can put your ink right on top of the foil. It just kind of resists it. So I'm using some Pinkfresh Studio inks and my Gina K blending brushes. You can use any kind of dye ink or blending brush. So I lined up the first stencil and that was the perfect for that light green color. Now I'm lining up the second stencil and putting a darker green color. You could use the same ink and just apply it heavier here if you wanted to. Each time I just wipe it clean with a dry cloth so I can move on to the next one. I then did this last two stencils in pink to finish off the flowers. So here I just wanted to remind you how to foil on cardstock and to show you that you can ink over your foiling. Okay, so now let's finish this card off and then we'll get into the acetate. This is a Spellbinders blanket stitched oval dies. I am really into oval dies lately because it fills our A2 cards really nicely. And this will be on my favorites list for this upcoming year because there are two sizes in it and it does a blanket stitch on both sides of the cutting line. So you can use the oval or the frame, and I'll do both today. Here I've cut the oval and you can see the little stitching on the outside edge. Now let's add the foil to our colored cardstock background. I wanted to show you how you can use tape to get your sandwich together to use your foil machine. So here's my hot foil plate that I showed you earlier. And I have some tape and I'm putting the tape on the top of the plate and taping it onto the cardstock, creating kind of a hinge up there. That way I can lift the plate and slide my foil inside, close it, and then put it on the machine. This way I can be sure that my hot foil plate is centered on my cardstock. So you see I'm sliding it in there, and then we can take this over to our hot foil machine. By the way, you always want the pretty side of your foil to touch the hot foil plate, and I even put a little note on the side of my machine so I wouldn't forget that, because I've messed it up a few times. And here you can see that beautiful foiling in the background on the colored cardstock. Now we need to create a sentiment, and I'm going to create several sentiments at once so I have some left over for the rest of this video. These are again stamp sets, coordinating dies, and hot foil plates that can be bought separately but used together. So you can either stamp all the sentiments at once, hot foil all the sentiments at once, and then cut them all out at once. And there are two different sets, the Celebrating You on the left and the Perfect Sentiments on the right. I'll be using the hot foil plate. So I'm taking one of the plates, putting it on my machine, which is ready to go. Then you take a big piece of foil and put it pretty side down onto it. Then your cardstock on top. Then you have your two Glimmer plates that came with the machine, and I put a piece of cardstock between them. Put that on top, push the timer button. Once the light stops flashing, you move it over to your die cut machine and go back and forth. And this will provide, again, the heat and the pressure to do the foiled sentiments. Again, you could use this stamp set if you don't have a foil machine, but the shine that you get and the smoothness that you get with the hot foil plate is really just beautiful. So here you go, we have all these sentiments. I'll use my little dry brush just to knock off some of that excess foil. It comes off very easily. And now we can use the coordinating die to cut all of these out at once. I love that because I have many sentiments that I can use on many cards and also keep some extras in my extras drawer. So whenever I need a sentiment, I don't have to go through the whole process again. After adding that Thinking of You sentiment to the center of the card, we have our card complete. So this is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I added it onto a light pink note card. And I actually put a white oval inside too to write my personal sentiment. Now you can see how beautiful that foiling is. There's no stamping on this card. So you can add color and inking to your foiled images. Now I could have done all of this with stamps and done heat embossing, but that's not nearly as smooth and not even close to the amount of shine that you get with foil. But that is an option too. Now that we've gone over the basics, let's go to my favorite technique for using hot foil, and that is on acetate. Now you can try whatever acetate you have. However, I find that using a heat-resistant acetate works great every time. There are 2 brands of heat-resistant acetate that work great, and I use both today. And I have them linked below together under the heat-resistant acetate link below. So if you click that, it'll take you to both. So I have my hot foil plate, my foil pretty side down, and here's my acetate. It's kind of hard to see there. See, it's a clear piece of heat-resistant acetate that I'm laying on top of the foil. Instead of cardstock, I'm using the acetate. Now we put our plate, and this time I'm putting 2 cardstock shims because the acetate's thinner than the cardstock I normally use. After the timer's done, I pick this up and I take it over to my die cut machine and I take it back and forth a couple of times. So the heat and the pressure will actually transfer that foil onto the acetate, and it is beautiful. Check this out. It is such a fun way to use your foil. You could gold heat emboss this, but the shine and the smoothness here is just incredible. So I thought it would be fun to use this for a shaker card window. I also wanted to add some color to the image. So I flipped my acetate over, and I'm using Copic markers to just add a bit of color to the back. I'm not trying to blend colors. It's hard to blend on a smooth surface like this, but just add color to the outline image. Any kind of permanent alcohol-based marker would work. You could use Sharpies, or you could paint with alcohol inks if you wanted to. Copic markers work great. I'm coloring on the back side of the acetate so I don't color the foil too. All right, once I'm done with that, we can assemble our little shaker window. Now I use that oval die from before, but this time I'm using the frame portion. And I put adhesive on the back of it, and I'm adding it right onto our acetate piece. That white cardstock is just behind there so you can see it. Okay, I can now trim off the excess of that acetate, and we have our window ready. Now we need to build up the walls of our shaker window. I want sequins to move around in there, so we need some walls behind, some dimension behind the frame. Now, some folks like to use foam tape. I prefer to build up die cut layers. So I die cut 4 white oval frames, and these are slightly smaller than the pink frame, so it doesn't show on the outside. I'm gluing these 4 levels together, or layers together, and this forms the walls of our shaker card. I will now glue this to the back of our pink frame. So now we have that acetate piece kind of raised up, which will allow the shaker bits to move, but also it creates a really cool shadow because the image is floating on the acetate. I have an extra white oval here, and I'm gluing that onto some white cardstock. Then I will put our little shaker bits on top of that oval. I'm using just some old clear sequins, like iridescent sequins. I wanted this to be subtle, so I didn't add any colorful sequins to this. And I didn't add many to it either because I want the foil on the window to show. Now I can put adhesive on the back of our frame and glue it on top of this. Now the reason I put that oval die cut on our white background is now I have that stitching on the inside background of the frame and on the pink frame itself. I used one of the leftover sentiments that I created from before and added everything to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding white note card. I had a leftover pink oval die cut that I put on the inside to write my message. There you can see that blanket stitch kind of cut on the inside, on the white, and on the pink on the outside, which I think really adds some fun detail to it. There's the shine of the foil, the little bit of color we added with our Copic markers, and then the little sequins that move around when you shake it. I wanted to share another idea that I didn't get to do, but remember this large sending hugs and good vibes your way hot foil plate? This would be pretty on acetate with rainbow foil, and then make a shaker card from that and put some colorful little shaker bits inside. I didn't get to do that for today's video, but I wanted to share the idea in case you wanted to try it yourself. Okay, now let's do some large butterflies. And this time I'm going to foil on vellum and I'll foil on acetate so you can see the difference. I'm using a heavyweight vellum, but I find you can use whatever vellum you have. This one I will link to below. It's nice and heavyweight, so you can even make a card base from it. Now, to do the foiling with the vellum is very much just like what we did with the paper or the acetate. So I have my hot foil plate. I'm laying my foil pretty side down onto it. Then my piece of vellum on top of that. And once again, I'm using 2 cardstock shims in the middle. That's because the vellum is thinner than the cardstock that I usually use with the machine, and I felt it did a better job giving pressure to get that foil to stay onto your vellum. And by the way, the foil doesn't come off. It stays on cardstock, vellum, acetate, whatever you have. And there you can see that beautiful Prism silver foil on vellum. Now I'll use the coordinating dies to cut this out. Keep in mind, if you wanted to add color to this vellum, you could just color on the back side with Copic markers as I did with the acetate. Okay, before we do anything with those, let's do the same hot foil plate, but this time on acetate. So I have my butterfly hot foil plate on the hot platform. Then I'm putting down this time a blue foil, pretty side down. Then I'm putting a piece of that heat-resistant acetate on top of that. And then we will do the same process. Press the timer button. Once the light stops flashing, we'll pick up everything and run it through our die cut machine. And look at this. Something about foil on acetate just looks really cool to me. So many techniques you can do. This time, to add color to our vellum and acetate butterflies, I decided to put color on cardstock behind it and let that color show through, instead of coloring the actual acetate like I did earlier. So I'm using the layering stencils that are available for this butterfly set. Now, I've used these layering stencils before. If you want to see a more in-depth look at that, I have that link to that video up on the top right. But all I'm doing here is using the 4 stencils to create 4 butterflies. 2 will be heavy amount of ink and 2 will be light amount of ink. So you can see I'm doing 2 here that are super heavy. Remember, the stencil and the dies create two butterflies at once, the full butterfly and the side view butterfly. Now, the reason I'm making one darker ink is so that it would show through the vellum more. One is lighter ink so that it'll show through the acetate. You don't need to put the ink down as heavy to show through the acetate. So I'm just following the stencils. Each one has little marks on the top telling you what order is best to go in, but really you could do whatever order you want. The cool thing about these layering stencils is some of the stencils overlap. So it creates a new color where your two colors of ink overlap. So it looks like you did a lot more inking than you really did. So here you can see how the blue overlaps the purple and the teal that we've already put down. I'll be using these colorful butterfly die cuts behind our vellum and acetate foiled pieces. But remember, if you don't have a foil machine, they do have a stamp set available so that you can do all of this with stamping or heat embossing. Now I'm going to skip ahead here. I did all the different parts of the stencil. I did grave for the body. Once we're done, we can use the coordinating dies to cut out our butterflies. And check out these beautiful results. So we have the lighter inked butterfly to go behind the acetate and the darker inked butterfly to go behind the vellum. So this is a fun technique because it gives these butterfly products that I already have and have already used a new and different look. Let's turn the two acetate butterflies into cards. I'll save the vellum ones for later. Now for the background on this one, I used one of my favorite background dies. This is the Pinkfresh Studio Radiating background. Look at what it looks like when you cut it from cardstock. See all that texture? Super cool. I glued that onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. Now I have the Pinkfresh Studio Stitched Scallop Circle die set. There are 2 circles and each circle cuts 2 frames and they fit together really nicely. On this card, I used the bigger of the 2 circle frames and cut it out 3 times from white cardstock, and I'm gluing those layers together. By the way, each of these frames has faux stitching detail on it too. I'm now going to glue the outline frame, which is 3 tall, onto our background. I will then glue the inside frame right into that, just to make the frame a bit bigger. You can use them together or separately. I then decided I wanted white cardstock behind there after all, so I just went ahead and glued in that leftover negative piece that I have over there on the left. This background is very simple, but I thought it was a nice backdrop for our butterfly, which I really want to be the focus. So here I have our light inked butterfly, and I'm putting a bit of strong double-sided adhesive right along the body of the butterfly. I will then add the acetate piece right on top of that. Now we can add this butterfly onto our card. So notice the acetate wings are kind of floating. The only place it's attached is the body. That's why you want to be sure to use something strong. I use Lawn Fawn double-sided tape. But this way, I kind of folded up the wings a little bit and check out how they kind of flutter. Super cool. Next, I'm adding strong liquid adhesive. This is Gina K Connect to the front of the acetate, just on the body. And then I'm adding gemstones on top of that, so the body will be gemstones. This helps to hide that clear adhesive tape that we have behind the acetate and keep everything held together. So I kind of bent up the acetate piece and look at how it kind of flutters. Super cool. It'll kind of pop up on its own when you take it out of the envelope. I love the look of that foil just floating above that inked butterfly. I also stamped "Thanks for everything" underneath it. I didn't want to add anything on top of the butterfly, so it was best to put the sentiment below. That sentiment is from an older Pinkfresh stamp set called Seamless Starburst Circles, a great set, and I like a lot of these small but bold sentiments, perfect for cards like this. Okay, now let's use the side view acetate butterfly, and you're going to see me change my mind as we put this card together, which is something I do a lot but don't always show in the video. Now off screen, I have die cut a bunch of these circle frames. I glued 2 white circles together and then a light pool one on top. I did this with the small frames and the big, so I could have these scallop rings here on the bottom right of the card, kind of a focal point on the card. Now I'm gluing all of these onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. And at this point, I decided that that was a little too plain for me. I wanted some interest on that white background. But I've already glued everything down. So all I did was cut my circles off. I was afraid to kind of pull them off, so I just got my scissors behind there and cut this off the front of the card. I can save that back of that card base for some die cutting later, but now I have this one piece I can take and put onto a different card with a different background. So I decided to use the Pinkfresh Studio Fancy Diagonal Stripe die. I love this. I just cut it from white and added it to a new white note card. I put my frame piece on top of that, along with our butterfly. And again, I did the same trick of putting some adhesive on just the body of the butterfly so the wings could be folded up, and then put gems on top of that. I added a foiled thank you sentiment that I created earlier, and this card was pretty quick to pull together after we did our little butterfly. And I really think it makes a big difference to add those diagonal stripes to the background. Very easy, just one die cut glued to the note card. Now remember, I still do have my Vellum butterfly. I went ahead and assembled him. See how you can see the bright color peeking from the sides? Love that look. Didn't get a chance to finish a card with this, but I'll probably do the same card that I did before, just with the Vellum wings instead of the acetate. This last card was my favorite to create, and it's actually an acetate note card that's foiled, and it's an overlay on a regular card that has color. So let's start by making the acetate note card with foiling. I have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of heat-resistant acetate. Again, I'll link to it below. And I'm turning this into note cards. What I like to do is just score at 5.5 inches down the middle. I'm using my The Works tool, which I think is a great tool, but you could use a scoreboard too. Then you fold the acetate over, and you really already have a score line, which really doesn't score easily, but watch, when you press it with the bone folder, it flattens into a note card very nicely. Then I can cut that in half at 4 1/4, and I have 2 acetate top folding cards. So I'm using the small butterfly hot foil plate to foil the front of this acetate card. I'm using some Prism silver foil. So I'm taking my butterflies and lining it up on the center there. And then we will slip that foil behind it. Remember how I created a little hinge there with tape? So I'll flip this up, slip the foil under it so that the pretty side touches the plate. And now we can foil our heat-resistant acetate. Now this plate is meant to do all these butterflies and then use the coordinating die to cut the butterflies out, but I thought I would keep it all together and use it as a background. Okay, so I ran this through. I did again use 2 cardstock shims because the acetate is thinner than regular cardstock, but look at this beautiful foiling on the front of an acetate note card. Now that since I flattened that note card, I want to reinforce that fold line, and there we have our clear card with foil. But I want color on this. I could do that Copic marker on the back of it trick, but I thought it'd be fun to use the layering stencils on a white note card and put it behind it. This time I decided to start with a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece of white cardstock, and there are little tick marks to that size on the stencils in the 4 corners. So you can easily line your cardstock up behind each stencil and you know it'll line up nicely. Once I'm done with all of the stenciling here, you'll see that these butterflies look good just stenciled alone. You don't need the hot foil plate to coordinate with it or the stamp set, but it's nice that there's all of those options. And remember, there is the die available that will cut them all out, so you end up with a bunch of individual butterflies, but I'm keeping them together for today's video. I'm sorry I'm hurrying through this inking so quickly, but I wanted to save the time in the video, and really it's basic inking. Any dye ink and inking tool would work great. And now for the last one, I'm using purple ink just for a pop of color. So here you can see just the inked background. You could use those alone without the stamp or foil plate, but look when we put the foil acetate over it. So beautiful, and it lines up wonderfully. Now I'm gluing that piece that we just inked onto a white note card. I did trim this a little bit narrow, so my card wound up being 4 by 5.5 inches. It just seemed to fit those butterflies better. And now that white note card can just slide into our acetate note card and the butterflies line up. Now there are a few ways you can stick that acetate note card to it so it doesn't move. You could sew across the top. You could tie string across the top. I decided to put a piece of double-sided tape along the back top of the white note card and put that inside of the acetate. So that clear tape on the back will hold it together. So the acetate is just kind of an overlay over our white note card. I kept the rest of the card very simple. I used those Scallop circle frame dies that I used earlier. I did the outside frame in purple and the inside in white and added that to a white circle die cut. And I glued that right to the front of our acetate. I used one of our leftover foil sentiments from before and put that right in the center, along with a tiny die cut heart. I also used some of the gold metallic pearls that are new from Pinkfresh Studio and glued those scattered on the acetate so those look like they were floating along with our butterflies. Here you can see how the butterflies line up with the inking behind it, and you get all this wonderful shine thanks to the acetate and the foil and those little gemstones. You just open up the card, and in the white area on the inside, you can write your personal sentiment. So this is a fun way to use your foil plates to create a clear card. Now I made it an overlay, but you could make the whole card clear itself if you prefer. All right, there you have some fun ways to use your foil plates and my favorite way to use them, and that's on acetate. If you're interested in any of the products I talked about, they're linked below as always. You can go to my blog where I have lots of photos and more information, and you can bookmark cards to look at in the future. In the middle here at the end, I'll link to 2 videos that I referred to in this video. Hopefully that'll be helpful. I appreciate you spending this time with me. As always, I can't say it enough, and we'll see you again soon with another video.